It was a day that started like any other, calm, ordinary, even forgettable. But by nightfall, this quiet Melbourne neighborhood would witness a story of courage that would travel around the world. In the heart of a burning house, a small dog named Leo would make a choice that few humans could, risking everything to save the most vulnerable lives under his care. Melbourne, Australia. August 2, 2009. The winter morning had started as any other in the peaceful suburb of Templestowe. The cool air carried the faint scent of eucalyptus from the nearby trees, and a light mist hovered over the rooftops, slowly giving way to the pale sun creeping over the horizon. Inside the Wilson family home, it was a typical Sunday routine. The kettle whistled in the kitchen, filling the house with the warm aroma of morning tea. Kids' laughter echoed from the living room as they played with their toys on the carpet, their bright voices weaving with the soft crackle of the radio. At the center of it all was Leo. Leo, the family's faithful Jack Russell Terrier, patrolled the house like a tiny, four-legged guardian. His white and tan coat gleamed under the kitchen light as he trotted between the rooms, making sure everyone was where they were supposed to be. Though small in size, Leo had the heart of a lion. Perhaps it was fate that he had been given such a name. He paused near the window, sniffing at the cool breeze slipping through the gap in the frame. His ears perked at every creak and shuffle, always on alert. Recently, the Wilsons had welcomed 4 tiny guests into their home, abandoned kittens they had found huddled beneath their front porch just a few weeks earlier. Eyes barely open, they had been helpless and frail, and the family couldn't bear to leave them in the cold. At first, Leo had eyed them with suspicion. He had always been the king of this castle, and now there were these wriggling, mewling invaders demanding attention. But as days passed, something remarkable happened. Leo softened. Whether it was instinct or the simple pull of compassion, he began watching over the kittens like a true protector. He lay beside their box during chilly nights, keeping them warm with his body heat. He barked gently when they cried, alerting the family that they needed care. They had become his little charges, and he their silent guardian. The morning unfolded lazily, clouds rolling in across the pale sky. The Wilsons had plans for a quiet day at home. Mrs. Wilson was folding laundry in the back room, the children were busy building forts out of sofa cushions, and Mr. Wilson tinkered with the backyard gate, which had been squeaking annoyingly for weeks. Leo, as always, kept a watchful eye on the kittens in their cardboard box near the living room heater. The family had set up their little nest with blankets and soft towels, hoping to keep them warm during the cool Melbourne winter. The kittens, now a few weeks old, were beginning to explore their surroundings, tumbling over each other in sleepy curiosity. Leo gave them an approving sniff, then circled the box and settled beside them, his head resting on his paws. Outside, a dry wind picked up. What no one noticed, not yet, was the faint scent creeping through the walls. A subtle, smoky edge that rode the wind like a hidden warning. It began in the wiring near the laundry room. An old, faulty socket, overburdened by too many appliances, sparked without fanfare. Tiny at first, harmless in appearance, the spark caught on a bit of lint tucked behind the washing machine. It smoldered quietly, unnoticed, as the Wilsons went about their day. The fire grew. By the time smoke began to curl beneath the door to the living room, Leo was already on his feet. His ears pricked forward, nose twitching, as he sniffed the unfamiliar, acrid scent. His body tensed, instincts screaming. He let out a sharp bark. Mrs. Wilson, folding towels in the hallway, looked up. "What is it, Leo?" she called, but before she could step closer, the fire alarm shrieked to life. Panic erupted. Smoke filled the house within seconds, dark clouds billowing from the laundry room and snaking through the hallways. Mr. Wilson burst into the house from the backyard, eyes wide as he took in the thickening haze. "Everyone out! Now!" he shouted. The children, frightened by the alarm and their father's urgency, dropped their toys and scrambled toward the front door. Mrs. Wilson grabbed the emergency bag by the door. They had prepared it just in case of bushfires, never imagining they'd need it for their own home. Leo barked furiously at the growing flames, then turned back toward the kittens who were mewling helplessly in their box. Smoke curled around them, choking and heavy. "Leo, come on." Mr. Wilson's voice rang out desperately. But Leo didn't move. Outside, the family huddled on the lawn, coughing and watching helplessly as flames licked higher along the walls of their beloved home. Mrs. Wilson's eyes widened in horror. "The kittens," she gasped, clutching her chest. "And Leo," one of the children cried. Firefighters arrived within minutes, sirens wailing, tires screeching against the asphalt. Neighbors poured from their houses, drawn by the smoke and commotion. "Anyone still inside?" a firefighter shouted as his team unrolled the hoses. "Our dog. And kittens." Mr. Wilson choked out, pointing toward the house. The firefighter's face hardened with determination. "We'll get them." Inside, the inferno had spread. Walls cracked and buckled under the heat. Furniture smoldered, collapsing into embers. Smoke thickened into a blinding curtain. Amidst the chaos, Leo stood over the kittens. His body, though small, formed a shield against the swirling ash and heat. He nudged the kittens closer together with his nose, then lay down over them, curling his body to block the worst of the smoke. His breathing grew ragged, his eyes stinging from the acrid air. But he refused to move. He had made his choice. Whatever happened next, he would not leave his little family behind. The firefighters forced their way through the front door, battling heat and choking darkness. Their lights pierced the smoke, sweeping across the devastated living room. There, one of them shouted, spotting movement in the corner. Through the haze, they saw Leo still, unmoving, his body sheltering the 4 tiny kittens. Without hesitation, the firefighter scooped up Leo, cradling him against his chest while his partner gathered the kittens into a protective bundle. "Go, go, go," they shouted, retreating from the burning house. Outside, cheers and gasps of relief rippled through the crowd as the rescuers emerged. Mr. Wilson rushed forward, tears brimming in his eyes. Mrs. Wilson clasped her hands to her mouth, overwhelmed with emotion. Is he okay?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The firefighter laid Leo gently on the grass, then turned to check the kittens. Miraculously, all 4 were alive, frightened, soot-covered, but alive. Leo, however, was motionless. "Stay with us, mate," the firefighter urged, rubbing Leo's chest briskly. Seconds felt like hours. Then a cough. A weak, rattling cough. Leo's chest heaved and he drew a ragged breath, eyes fluttering open. A chorus of gasps and relieved sobs erupted from the family and onlookers. "He's alive," cried Mrs. Wilson, falling to her knees beside him. Leo blinked up at her, his gaze clouded but loyal as ever. The kittens mewed softly nearby, crawling instinctively toward him. Even in his weakened state, Leo managed a faint wag of his tail. He had done it. He had saved them. The sirens had faded, but the weight of fear still lingered in the smoky air outside the Wilson family home. Neighbors stood clustered along the street, some clutching blankets around their shoulders, others holding their breath as they watched firefighters battle the remaining flames. The house still hissed and steamed under jets of water, but the worst had passed. What mattered now was life. And life, fragile, battered, but still burning bright, lay in the arms of the firefighter, cradled carefully like the treasure it was. "Leo." His chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths, soot smeared across his once white fur. His eyes, barely open, fluttered with exhaustion. Against his belly, the 4 kittens squirmed weakly, their fur blackened with ash, but their small hearts still beating. The family rushed to them as the firefighter placed Leo gently on a folded blanket atop the lawn. "He's breathing," the firefighter confirmed, though worry edged his voice. "But he needs help. Fast." Without wasting a second, the Wilsons bundled Leo and the kittens into a neighbor's car and sped toward the nearest veterinary clinic. The drive felt like an eternity. Mrs. Wilson cradled Leo in her lap, her hands trembling as she brushed soot from his face. Tears streaked her cheeks, cutting clean lines through the ash smudged across her skin. "Stay with us, Leo," she whispered over and over, her voice barely steady. "Please, boy. You've come this far." The kittens, wrapped in a soft towel beside her, let out tiny cries, their eyes wide and frightened. One of them nestled against Leo's paw as if sensing that he was their shield against the darkness. At the clinic, the veterinary staff were already waiting at the door, having been alerted by emergency services. They whisked Leo away on a gurney, the kittens in a separate carrier. Mr. Wilson gripped his wife's hand as they followed into the sterile, bright treatment room. The vets worked quickly, administering oxygen to Leo through a small mask, flushing his eyes with saline, checking for burns along his skin. "He suffered severe smoke inhalation," one of the vets explained grimly. "But he's a fighter." Mrs. Wilson could only nod, tears welling once more. "That he is," she whispered. The hours crawled by. The Wilsons sat in the clinic's waiting room, numb with exhaustion and fear. News crews had already arrived, tipped off by neighbors who had witnessed the rescue. Through the glass windows, cameras flashed as reporters tried to capture every angle of the unfolding story. Inside, though, the world felt small, reduced to the rhythmic beep of monitors and the gentle rise and fall of Leo's chest. Updates came in waves. The kittens, miraculously, were stable. Despite the smoke and heat, they had no serious injuries, protected by Leo's body and the swift actions of the firefighters. Leo's condition, however, remained uncertain. "He's holding on," the vet reassured them. "He's a brave one." Word spread fast. By evening, the story of Leo's heroism had gone viral, reaching beyond Melbourne to newsrooms around the world. Headlines read: "Brave dog saves kittens from fire in Melbourne." "Heroic Jack Russell shields tiny lives from flames." Messages of support flooded the clinic. Strangers sent flowers, blankets, and letters of encouragement. One note, handwritten on yellow stationery, read, "Dear Leo, you are a true hero. Rest well, brave boy. The world is cheering for you." In the days that followed, Leo fought with every ounce of strength in his small, determined body. There were moments when his breathing faltered, when his heart stuttered and monitors beeped urgently. Each time, the veterinary team sprang into action, refusing to give up on their courageous patient. Mrs. Wilson spent hours by Leo's side, softly speaking to him, her voice a lifeline pulling him back from the brink. "You're not done yet, Leo," she murmured. "You've got a family waiting for you. And 4 little kittens who need their hero." Slowly, signs of improvement began to show. First, a flicker of his ears at the sound of her voice. Then, a twitch of his tail when the kittens were brought close, their tiny paws scrabbling against the side of the carrier. And finally, days after the fire, Leo's eyes opened fully, clear and bright once more. He gazed at Mrs. Wilson, then at the kittens, and let out a faint, familiar chuff of breath. It wasn't much, but it was enough to send tears streaming down Mrs. Wilson's face. News of Leo's awakening spread like wildfire. The clinic's phones rang nonstop as well-wishers from across the globe called to express their joy. Television crews lined up outside, eager for updates on Melbourne's newest hero. Veterinary staff set up a small display of the letters and gifts Leo had received, a wall of love surrounding his recovery area. One local bakery even delivered a custom-made dog-friendly get-well-soon cake shaped like a fire truck, which Leo nibbled at with cautious delight. But for Leo, the greatest medicine wasn't in the gifts or the fame. It was in the familiar faces of his family and the quiet, steady presence of the kittens who curled beside him in their shared bed at the clinic. Day by day, strength returned to his limbs. His breathing grew easier and he began to move without assistance, wagging his tail with increasing vigor. He even managed a soft bark when the vet teasingly wiggled a plush toy in front of him. The Wilsons, watching him reclaim his spirit, felt their hearts swell with gratitude. "You've always been our hero, Leo," Mr. Wilson said, kneeling beside him. "Now the whole world knows it too." One chilly morning, as frost dusted the windows of the clinic, Leo took his first unsteady steps out of his recovery bed. The vet cheered softly and Mrs. Wilson covered her mouth with her hands, tears brimming in her eyes. Leo wobbled for a moment, then steadied himself. He turned to the kittens, who chirped excitedly at his side, and gently nudged one with his nose. It let out a tiny happy mew. The room filled with quiet applause as the moment marked a turning point, not just in Leo's recovery but in the story that had touched so many hearts. Outside the clinic, a rainbow arched across the pale morning sky as if the universe itself celebrated the triumph of courage and love. Leo, the brave little dog from Melbourne, had not only survived the fire. He had emerged stronger, his spirit unbroken, his bond with his family deeper than ever. And though scars would remain, reminders of the ordeal they had all endured, they would wear them with pride. Because heroes deserve to be remembered. And Leo, without a doubt, was one of the finest. The days that followed Leo's first steps felt like watching winter slowly melt into spring. Every morning brought small victories. His breathing grew stronger, more even. His eyes, once dulled by smoke and exhaustion, now sparkled with their familiar sharpness. His tail wagged more confidently, and his steps, once shaky, gained steadiness. But Leo wasn't the only one recovering. The kittens, once frail and soot-stained, had blossomed into lively bundles of fur. They played in their cozy enclosure at the clinic, tumbling over each other in cheerful chaos. They had survived the fire, but now they thrived, climbing, pouncing, and, most of all, curling up beside Leo whenever he lay down to rest. The clinic staff, moved by the bond between them, often placed the kittens by Leo's side during his recovery hours. "It's like they know," one of the nurses whispered. "They know who their hero is." Mrs. Wilson watched these quiet moments with misty eyes, her heart swelling with gratitude and wonder. "You've done more than just save them, Leo," she said softly. "You've given us all hope." As Leo grew stronger, so too did the anticipation of bringing him home. The house in Templestowe, though charred and damaged by the flames, had become a symbol of resilience. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers from across Melbourne rallied together, helping the Wilson family begin the long process of rebuilding. Donations poured in, supplies, food, even offers from builders to help repair the damage. Children from the local school sent hand-drawn cards decorated with hearts and paw prints, scribbled with messages like, "Leo, you're our superhero. Thank you for saving the kittens." The Wilsons pinned the drawings along the walls of their temporary rental home, creating a mural of love and support that warmed them on even the hardest days. But the true warmth, they knew, would only return when Leo came home. Finally, after weeks of care, the vet delivered the words they had longed to hear. "He's ready," she announced, her face breaking into a smile. "Leo is going home." Cheers erupted from the clinic staff, and Mrs. Wilson fought back tears of joy. The kittens, now curious explorers, scampered around Leo as if sensing the good news. One clambered onto his back and perched proudly like a tiny sentinel. Leo, ever patient, turned his head and gave the kitten a gentle nudge with his nose. It was time. The journey back to Templestowe was far different from the frantic rush to the clinic weeks earlier. This time, the car was filled with light, sunlight streaming through the windows, the sound of laughter as the Wilson children cradled the kittens in their laps, and the rhythmic thump of Leo's tail against the seat. As they pulled into the driveway, a small crowd of neighbors awaited them, waving homemade banners. "Welcome home, Leo, our hero." Mr. Wilson opened the car door, and Leo bounded out with surprising energy, his paws landing on familiar soil. He paused for a moment, sniffing the air, as if to confirm he was truly home. The kittens followed in their carrier, their bright eyes wide with curiosity. Though the house still bore the scars of the fire, the yard was alive with life. Flowers had been planted along the walkway and cheerful streamers hung from the fence. It wasn't just a homecoming, it was a celebration. As Leo trotted up the path, cheers filled the air, and Mrs. Wilson knelt to embrace him, burying her face in his fur. "Welcome home, brave boy," she whispered. The days that followed were filled with healing, both for the house and the hearts that called it home. Builders repaired the damaged walls, volunteers repainted charred surfaces, and the community continued to rally around the Wilson family. But perhaps the most beautiful restoration happened in the simple, everyday moments. Leo, now stronger than ever, resumed his patrol of the yard, watching over his family with renewed vigor. The kittens, growing bolder each day, chased each other across the grass, leaping at fluttering leaves and sunbeams. They climbed over Leo like a living playground, and he endured their antics with quiet pride. Sometimes he would lie beneath the shade of a tree, his eyes half-closed, ears twitching at their playful cries. It was a scene of peace hard-won. A reminder that even in the face of devastation, life finds a way to bloom anew. Media outlets continued to share Leo's story, and his fame spread far beyond Melbourne. Requests came in for interviews, offers to feature Leo in magazines, even invitations to events honoring local heroes. But for the Wilson family, the greatest honor was simply seeing their beloved dog happy and healthy once more. They politely declined most invitations, choosing instead to spend quiet, precious days at home, away from cameras and crowds. "This is where Leo belongs," Mrs. Wilson said softly one evening, watching him curl up beside the kittens in their new bed. With his family. On the first warm day of spring, as the sun bathed the yard in golden light, the Wilson family gathered for a small picnic. Neighbors joined them, bringing treats and stories, and the air buzzed with laughter and birdsong. Leo lounged in the grass, eyes bright, tail wagging lazily as he watched over his kittens. They pounced and tumbled nearby, their joyful energy filling the air. One kitten climbed onto Leo's back and batted playfully at his ear. Leo flicked his ear in response but didn't move, content to let them play. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the rebuilt home, Mrs. Wilson wrapped an arm around her husband and smiled. "We're so lucky," she said quietly. Mr. Wilson nodded, watching Leo with a mixture of pride and affection. "No," he replied, "we're blessed." As twilight deepened, the family lit a small lantern and placed it on the porch. It glowed softly, casting gentle light over the yard, a symbol of hope and resilience. Leo, lying nearby, watched the flame flicker and fade. Around him, the kittens curled up for the night, their tiny bodies pressed against his side. The house behind them stood strong once more, filled with warmth, love, and the quiet hum of life. And in that peaceful moment, it was clear to all, Leo wasn't just a hero of the fire. He was the heart of the home.